This is the Unplugged podcast, brought to you by the team at Under the Mango Tree. Unplugged is all about building connections across teams and regions by uncovering the passions, talents, and interests of people in K&IP. We hope you enjoy episode 1.
So, Will, thank you so much for your time and speaking to me. This is our first episode of Unplugged, and thank you for your kind availability to speak with me and be like a test for this. Hopefully, this goes up okay, and then we can do more episodes in the future.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks for having me and inviting me to be on. I'm very excited.
Thank you. So let's kick it off. We would love to know more about you. So tell us about yourself, where you were born, where you lived, how long you've been at Google, what roles you have done, anything that you'd like to share for a broader audience.
Sure. So I born and raised in Sydney, Australia. I've lived in Sydney for most of my life. I lived for a short period of time in Hong Kong. It was mainly for work purposes. The rest of the time, largely in Sydney. I grew up in a place just outside of Sydney called the Blue Mountains. For people who have traveled to Sydney before, you probably know it's a bit of a tourist area.
Yeah.
So that was a nice place to grow up. Lots of kind of nature and outdoors kind of time, and bushwalks and all of that sort of thing. So that's kind of a big part of my life now because of growing up in that area. And I joined Google 3.5, almost 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
Joining in the team that I'm currently in, the search partnerships team, and have been in that team ever since. Prior to Google, I did a couple of things. The most interesting thing that I did was working for a bank here in Australia, which doesn't sound very interesting, but I was working in what they called their innovation lab.
Right.
Working on robots. It was like physical humanoid robots, and experimenting with them and understanding if we could utilize physical humanoid robots somehow in bank branches or anything like that. So that was kind of fun. And that kind of led me in more to technology, and here I am at Google.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And how's your experience been at Google so far?
Yeah, great. It like everyone, the first I would say for me the first 9 months was a pretty intense kind of experience. It's a very unique place, and it's a very big place and a complex place, and so kind of ramping up into that was an intense experience. But kind of post that, it's a great place to work. I mean, getting to work on literally the biggest and most impactful technology products, or products full stop, in the world, and with some very, very smart and capable people and interesting people, and it's a great place to work, and of course the free food and the free coffee is doesn't hurt either.
Awesome. Thank you. And today's discussion is about music and your love for music. So we all know that you play the guitar. Tell us how you got about, becoming a musician, playing the guitar. What was it about the guitar that really attracted you? Why did you pick it up?
Sure. Yeah. So guitar wasn't actually the first kind of instrument that I got interested in. My grandfather played the piano, and so not kind of in any serious professional way. He just kind of like played it. And then when he passed away, we got his piano. And so we kind of had this piano sitting at home for a while. And then one day I just kind of decided that I wanted to play the piano as well and learn that. And so I said to my mum, I want to play the piano. And so we went down to the local music store, bought a learn to play piano book, and then I started reading through that and started practicing and playing the piano and learning the keys, and also learning to read sheet music and all of that sort of stuff. And I did that for, I don't know, I guess a couple of years until I got into high school. And then there were kind of ads going around for music tutoring, where you could learn a bunch of different instruments. And one of those instruments was saxophone. And for some reason that kind of just appealed to me at the time. Right. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to learn saxophone. And so that's the only instrument that I've had actual, teaching or tutoring for. And so I learned that one kind of properly, I guess you would say. Did that for a couple of years. And so I was in a couple of, jazz bands and also like an orchestral sort of thing, but I enjoyed the small jazz bands more. And then that led me to guitar. So basically, I was playing piano and saxophone at the time, and was just like, this is great, but like I'm listening to completely different music. Like I'm listening to Green Day and Blink-182 and playing Miles Davis or whatever, or Stevie Wonder or something. So like there was a misalignment in what I was getting to play and what I was listening to. And so I was like, I want to be able to play stuff that I listen to. And so I bought like a $30 guitar off eBay, because that's where you got everything at the time on eBay, and acoustic guitar. And and then just kind of, looked up stuff on the internet and learned to play the guitar. Played acoustic for a little bit, bought a cheap electric, which is what I really wanted to play because of, the bands I was listening to. Played that for a while, and then kind of started to upgrade my guitars and, really get into it. And then eventually guitar was the main thing that I was playing. I kind of gave up the piano and saxophone to a certain degree, and was kind of just like really, really got into guitar and kind of went from there.
Awesome, thank you. And so you've just had formal training around the saxophone for a couple of years. The rest, you say the piano, you just read it off a book and read sheet music, and then you finally switched onto the guitar. And so that doesn't mean that you've had formal training around how to play the guitar. It's just the music theory that you have learned around the saxophone that you have transposed onto the guitar.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure there's a bunch of things that I do wrong technically when I play the guitar, and I'm sure I'm not as good as I probably could be if I had have got lessons. But it just I was never that keen on getting lessons for music. It always just kind of felt to me like something fun that I just wanted to do for fun. And if I had someone teaching me to do it, then it stopped being fun, sort of thing. So it's probably am not as good as I could be because of that, but I definitely enjoyed it more, I think, not having lessons.
Right. And so tell us about your experience, the transposition from knowing to play classical instruments into an acoustic guitar and then onto an electric guitar. How was that experience? Because you had some knowledge about music.
Yeah.
Transposing that and, letting your creativity flow on the guitar. How was that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think with every new instrument that you pick up, it's a quicker ramp up process, right? Like, because as you say, you have that foundational kind of understanding of how music works, like what keys are, what tempo is, like being able to keep in time, like all of that kind of foundational stuff. And then it becomes more about just the technicalities of that particular instrument and how that, more about the mechanics of a guitar versus a piano sort of thing, or a saxophone. And so, yeah, like I think the two things for guitar that were different to piano and saxophone for me were one, it was getting into like tablature, so guitar tabs, which is like a different way of kind of reading music that you don't have in piano or saxophone or anything like that. And the huge availability of tabs on the internet was kind of just like that was an amazing thing that I found. The amount of music that I was then able to play on the guitar versus what I could play on saxophone and piano was just this huge, it like opened up this huge kind of universe, right? Because I've never been like that good at just listening to something and being able to play it. I can kind of do that for a little bit, but then I get a bit impatient and I'm like,
Right.
but I'm quite good at like sight reading music. So as in like, I can look at a piece of music and play, generally play it after one or two goes through. And so the huge amount of guitar music that was out there was just like an amazing thing to me. I was like, there's just so much more diversity in what I can play now. Whereas with piano, it was like you had to go buy a book of Mozart or something and then play that. But that was, you go buy like a blues book or something and you have songs in there. But with the kind of combination of the rise of the internet plus an instrument like guitar, which is so widely played, and there's so many people contributing music online for that particular instrument, that was the kind of the biggest thing for me in terms of like, creativity and all of that sort of thing. It was just a huge, and I think that widened then what I wanted to listen to and all these sort of things, because I could play so much more. There was like pop music I could play, as well as like, the punk stuff that I was listening to, plus then like more heavy metal, hardcore stuff that I got into because I could play that on guitar, and it kind of, opened up a whole new world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm assuming because of your understanding of how to play the saxophone, that would also helped you in the creativity aspects of it. Because as we know, some of the more famous musicians, they can play multiple instruments. Some of them don't have traditional guitar tutoring. They started off with classical music, moved on to the guitar. And some of the very famous guitarists also play multiple instruments. They can play the piano. I'm not very aware of many guitarists being able to play the saxophone. That's a new thing, but I'm sure that adds an element of creativity in your work.
Yeah, I mean, I think your style of playing is a cumulative thing, right? Like it develops over time based on what you're exposed to, what you listen to, and what you play. And so if you're playing an instrument like the saxophone, then predominantly you're playing like jazz and blues and that type of music. And I think that probably then influences perhaps like the style and the way that you play future instruments, or at least the kind of the direction that you perhaps go into. Playing saxophone was also the first time that I played with other people, and also the first time that I learned how to improvise, because playing saxophone, there's a lot of improvisation. You know, like you see a jazz band and that's a big part of what they do. They're just playing along, and then there's someone improvises something, and someone else kind of follows along with that and figures out what they're doing and what key they're in or whatever, and so that whole getting that understanding of how that works and how you can, like, you know, pick a key and then just improvise stuff in that key and it sounds good generally.
Yes.
That I think then probably helped me a lot and influenced me a lot in terms of like writing music for the guitar and that whole thing, you know, that I did kind of later with bands and that sort of thing. That was a big kind of formative part of that. And yeah, and I don't know if I hadn't have had that improvising kind of that experience, if I would have been a different songwriter or a different, you know, guitarist as a result. Probably, I'm sure I would have.
Interesting. What do you think about, you know, being a musician? Because you brought up the word improvisation, creativity, your style of music, style as a, you know. So outside of music, do you think your music education or your affinity for music has helped you as a person in your daily life, at your work, in how you interact and maintain relationships? Do you think that has helped you, like when you reflect on the way you compose music, or your awareness about general music styles and improvisation style, creativity? Has that affected you as a person, or do you think it's an element in a way, you know, you interact with your general interactions? And
yeah, I mean, other than you know, like I just randomly burst into song around people and that sort of thing. No, like I can't think of like necessarily a direct link or kind of reflection on that, but what I kind of could say is that it's like when music forms a large part of your life, it then obviously determines the people that you interact with and your social circles and what you do and, you know,
yes.
all of that sort of thing. And so, you know, growing up, pretty much all of my closest friends were people who were into the same music that I was into. Yes. Whether we played in a band together, which I did with some people, some of my closest friends, or whether we just kind of listened to the same music and went to gigs together and all of that sort of thing. So it definitely had a, you know, a pretty significant impact on who I became, purely from that perspective of kind of driving who I interacted with, and then obviously that impacts who you become. And then kind of, you know, later, I guess later on, when I met my now wife, we did a lot of kind of dancing and that sort of thing together, which was a bit of an extension of playing music. To me, at least, it was kind of like another kind of creative
Yes.
outlet, and it was something that she was interested in. So we did a lot of that, and kind of, you know, we bonded over that, like, common kind of creative interest, that sort of thing. So it's had a significant impact on my personal life from all of those different you know, kind of facets, and has, yeah, like largely driven who my friends and wife are, as a result.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. some of the musicians that I know, either personally or have met them, I see an element of creativeness also creep into their work, into their interactions, because music consumes so much of their lives. If you have 24 hours, they're probably associated more than an hour every day with their music. It defines a bit of their interactions, their thinking, like you said, their friend circles. So very interesting. And what I can, take from you is that it's played a significant part in your life too.
You play instruments as well, right?
I just a little bit. I can strum the guitar and picked it up over the last 2 years. I used to play back as a teenager, then stopped for a while, and during COVID, I picked up a guitar, and I've been playing recently.
Yeah, and do you think that can you see that like kind of creative element in your work?
So I'm not sure. It's a bit too early, but yes, it unlocks certain parts of your brain that you wouldn't have used. For example, creativity, scales, improvisation. But that's on a very music front. I don't know if it's affecting my work. One thing is generally, which I find is my interactions with my close friends and family has probably gotten better because of music. Because when I play, they give me the respect so that even I have a very young child, he doesn't come and disturb me. He knows dad is playing, and he probably would play for 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
But if I'm just sitting and not doing anything, so my interactions obviously go up, and I don't get my me time. But the guitar is a way for me to get my me time, and also my interactions, therefore, with my wife and my child has improved because they give me that respect, and they know, like, I'm not out, I'm at home. At home playing the guitar, investing in myself, which also helps calm me down. And basically it reflects the mood that I'm in. If I'm like jamming hard, maybe I have a lot of energy. If I'm just improvising, so I'm like in a creative flow. And that's all of this as nonverbal communication. So that's been great for me.
Yeah. It's also it's a very kind of mindful activity as well, right? Like it's
yes.
you like obviously when I was playing music the most, screen time and that sort of thing wasn't as big an issue as it is now. But and now I have less time to play music. But whenever I am, it is a great thing because you are 100% focused on that. You can't be thinking about other things. You can't be looking at your phone or at the computer or whatever. You have to be kind of completely immersed in what you're doing. So it's a great way to kind of switch off from the rest of the world and just focus on something else.
That is very true. Like you said, it's a very mindful activity. And over time, I think, at least for me, I reach a state of evenness, not too excited, not too depressed, a state of evenness where I'm just mindful about the music. One thing that I've realized is my ability to pick up sounds has gotten better. So really listening to notes and tempo, that has gotten slightly better, I feel. So even my hearing, I think, has generally gotten better because I'm able to pick up smaller, nuanced sounds that probably I just glazed over in the past.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I noticed when I started recording music, less so when I started playing it, but when I started recording it and kind of seeing how music was constructed, like how like all the different layers of music and all of that sort of thing, I noticed kind of immediately that I would start to hear, like whenever I heard music post that, I would kind of hear it completely differently. Like I would be able, I would hear so many more kind of layers and different parts of a song, as opposed to before I would just hear, the song, but like the understanding of how a song is built and the layers, and it's like, oh, you can hear that there's, multiple vocal tracks there, or there's like, the bass guitar is doing this versus the electric guitar, or whatever it might be. There's several electric guitars, and so that's I think there is a cool kind of like virtuous cycle there with your hearing and your music playing.
Awesome, thank you. So so tell us about your experience of playing in the band. You said you started from high school. Do you still have a band? Do you currently play in a band?
Yeah, so as I said, I started playing in bands when I was in high school, playing the saxophone, so playing in kind of jazz bands and that sort of thing. And then when I picked up the guitar, I played in one band initially called Residual, and that was a band that was kind of just like a high school band that existed, and they were looking for a new guitarist. I think their guitarist like dropped out or something like that, and I just picked up the guitar, and so they asked if I could come along and play. And they were kind of like a pretty, I would say, down the line rock kind of band. So they played a lot of like Foo Fighters and what else? Grinspoon, which is an Australian band. Anyway, yeah, so kind of just rock. And so we recorded a bit of a demo with them. That was my first recording experience. That was fun. I started writing some music for them as well. That was fun. The main issue that we had with that band is that the singer in the band couldn't really sing, and that was a bit of a problem in terms of the popularity of the band, I guess. Anyway, so then that kind of just fizzled out as a result of that, I think. And then the drummer from that band and I decided we wanted to start another band, and found another one of our friends who was kind of interested in music but and could sing but wasn't playing anything at the time. And we said, can you join our band and sing, but also can you pick up the bass guitar, because we need someone to play bass guitar? And he said sure. And so then we had our band, and that band was called Brand New Fashion, which was a lyric from a Fall Out Boy song. Fall Out Boy being a band that we were into at the time.
Right.
And that was a very much like a kind of pop punky sort of band. So we all were into the same sort of music. As I said before, like Blink-182, Green Day, Fall Out Boy. Who else are people going to know? I guess they're probably the main ones that people will know. So yeah, a lot of that kind of pop punk. There was a big pop punk kind of movement, I guess, in the from the 90s to the 2010s, sort of that 20 years, and so it was all part of that. And that was the main band that I was in. I was in that band for it must have been 5 or 6 years or something like that, coming out of high school and then through university. And that was probably the most successful band that I was in. So we wrote quite a bit of music. We recorded a EP, I guess you would call it, and we put that up on MySpace, which was a thing at the time, and got got some fans. People liked us, and we were kind of doing lots of gigs, mainly around Sydney, and then eventually this Australian band, popular kind of Australian band at the time called Short Stack, found us, and they asked us to open for them at one of their gigs in Sydney. So we did that, and their record label really kind of liked us, and thought they were really good and whatever. And they said, "Can you come and do a bit of a session for us?" So basically, where they get all the record label execs and in a room kind of like this actually, and you play some songs for them, and they talk to you about what do you want in the band, and what do you see the future of the band, and all that sort of thing. And so we did that, and they were like, "Yeah, we want to sign you to our record label, and we want to help you grow, and well, we think that you're good, and we like these songs, and all of that sort of thing." And so that happened, and that was quite obviously for us a massive thing, because we hadn't kind of expected to get to the point of getting a record deal or anything like that. We were kind of just doing the whole band thing for a bit of fun and doing covers and of the bands that we liked and all of that sort of thing. So that was kind of, that was fun to get to that point.
Awesome. And how much music did you produce?
So
how long did it last?
It kind of took a bit of a weird turn after that. So, and quite I guess, like a stereotypical record label destroying the band kind of narrative, from my point of view anyway. So basically we started, hadn't put pen to paper yet, but we had started writing new music, preparing to go into the studio, all of that sort of thing. And the music execs asked us, "We think that you need to get a new band member." So at the time there was the drummer, me on guitar, and then the other guy playing bass and singing. And they were like, "We need you to get another person who plays the keyboard, because we think that you should start to integrate some kind of electro poppy kind of vibes into your music," because that was really big at the time. It was this big kind of like, electro pop punk merging kind of thing. And we were like, okay, that's interesting. So then we started interviewing people for the band and getting people to try out for the band, and all of this sort of thing, which was a whole process, and very, very difficult, after you've been in a band with just the three of you for 5 years, and it's been your little thing, and you've grown it, and you've got some level of success, and you've got your kind of vibe going, and how you all work together, and to try to introduce someone new into that environment, very difficult for everyone. Anyway, so we did that, and then the next thing was, we also think that you should change the name of the band, because we don't like brand new fashion. We think it should be something else. Oh, and we also think you should change the way that you dress. We think your image should be more kind of like edgy and whatever, and wear some leather and that sort of thing.
Right.
As well. Oh, and by the way, also we really think that you should kind of stop this whole pop punk thing. We think that's dead. We really want you to go down the electro pop route completely, and just write music like that. So forget about the old music that you have. Just start writing some new music down that path. And anyway, so by the time all of this had happened, I was kind of like, this is not what I really want out of this. This is what I said, to my bandmates. This is not what I want. I want, just kind of want to play music with you guys, music that we like. I don't really care about getting signed and being, a big band. Like, that's not really why I started doing this. And so I don't want to, sign the contract with these people, because I don't want to do all the things they're asking us to do. Anyway, my bandmates disagreed with that, and they did want to sign the contract, and they were happy to kind of make all the changes and all that sort of thing. So I left the band, and so they found another guitarist. They changed their name, They wrote some kind of electro pop music, signed the contract, released an album, and then that was about it. They toured around a little bit. They never really kind of got anywhere. The record label then fell apart and collapsed, and the band kind of ultimately went nowhere. So, which is not an ideal end to the story, but unfortunately the reality of the music industry, I think.
Thanks for sharing that story. Very interesting story. They asked you to sell your soul for the contract. That was interesting. And I've heard similar stories from other bands that I know of. But that's an interesting story. Thank you for sharing. All right. So tell us more about like the genres of music that you like, or generally bands that you follow, that you've liked over the years and you continue to like, or at this point of time you're listening to.
Yeah. So as I said, at the time of being in that band, it was really kind of Green Day and Blink-182 and those sort of bands. I also, as I said, started getting into some kind of heavier bands. There were some that were influenced from my brother listened to like Linkin Park and Metallica and some bands like that. So I started listening to that, but then also got into a bunch of. I really listened to a lot of kind of small pop punk hardcore sort of bands. So I'm trying to think of the biggest ones that people might know. There's a band called Thrice. They were kind of semi-big. The Ataris, Sum 41. People might know that one.
Yeah,
a bunch of those kind of bands at the time, and so I listened to them for a long time, and then I think that was probably that was my main musical interest at that point in time, because that was very much part of the what I was playing in the band and all of that sort of thing. Once that kind of ended, I think expanded my musical interest probably quite a bit more, and so I guess to the point now where I really listen to quite a lot of different things. So I would say now the main thing that I listen to now is pop music. I would say that's the main genre, and anything within pop music. I also listen to all the new kind of pop punk stuff and everything that's kind of coming out there. I listen to, everyone, if you listen to anything on the charts, you kind of listen to like R&B stuff. I got really into Eminem at one point, and was kind of really, really into him and rap and all of that sort of thing. And I think probably the other main one is at certain points in time I've gotten into more kind of like indie, mellow, acoustic style music. That's probably more as I've gotten older and maybe more stressed out by life. I've listened to that more. But my listening now is very different because of the likes of Spotify and everything. I honestly don't know most of the artists that I listen to now. Like I couldn't name who they are, right? Because it's just on Spotify and it's some playlist based on more of a mood that I'm in than an artist that I like. Whereas back in the day, it was very much like, I like this band, I'm going to go buy their album because I just released it, and buy the CD and listen to that a million times. And so I was very aware of who I was listening to or who I wasn't. But now it's like much more diverse, and also I don't really know who the artists exactly are, because it's driven by Spotify, what Spotify tells me to listen to now.
Very interesting. You bring up an interesting point. Back in the day, the availability of music was limited, so you literally had to buy an album just to listen to a song. But with internet music, you can listen to just that song, and it's so widely available. YouTube, Spotify, there's so many other music services. Some of them are free, some of them you pay a little sum to hear music. And then they dictate what music you're listening to rather than you going and choosing. I mean, there's a choice, but then, like you mentioned, you don't know the artist. You're just in a genre or a mood that you're listening to. I think that's an evolution that has happened over the last 10, 15 years with the advent of Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, algorithmic suggestions, recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. Which is it's a great thing from the point of view of discovering new music, right? Like, it's so much easier to discover new music now and expand your tastes and expand what you listen to. But at the same time, I mean, it's the age-old story of the internet. There's more great content out there, but there's also just a lot more content, full stop, out there. And so trying to, I think as a, like, for us as a band back in the 2010s, it was between the 2000s, 2010s, it was relatively easier, I think, back then to get your music out there, because it was kind of this nice sweet spot of, like, the internet was just becoming a big thing. There were, like, sites like MySpace that were becoming big, and so you had distribution for your content, and you didn't need to stand on a street corner and hand out CDs and be like, listen to our demo, which is what you had to do prior to that, right? But at the same time, it hadn't got to the point where it is at now, where I don't know how you would, like, it's very difficult, I would imagine, to break through as an artist now. Like, you have some music, okay, great, you put it on every platform available, like, maybe someone will find it, maybe, like, who knows, but will enough people find it? Like, I think it's difficult now. There's so much more content out there, so much more music available now than there used to be. So it's a good thing, and it's a challenging thing, I think.
Challenging thing, yes. Just so much availability. But you also see a lot of talent that you would never see. Guitarists from across the world, people doing covers, but in a very different rendition of the original music. That's completely new. And so it's also expanded the horizon of what you can do with your music that you create. But yes, it's just that discovery becomes challenging. If you are a musician, your path to making money out of music can also be very, very challenging.
Yeah, I remember in the kind of earlier days of YouTube, when YouTube covers, music covers on YouTube, that was just becoming a thing, and you had some of the first people starting to like make a living out of doing music covers, and that was an amazing thing to me. I was just like you can actually, you don't have to even write any music. You can just, like, interpret someone else's song, play it, and be a very talented musician and play it very well, and make a living off that. That's amazing. But there's so many people doing that now on YouTube. But again, it would be hard to break through.
Yeah, as a consumer, it's great. Great music I get to hear for free, almost free. but as a writer or producer of music, it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming to an hour, so I'll ask you a few quick fire questions. What is your favorite? Who is your favorite guitarist? Or who are your favorite guitarists?
Oh, yeah, that's. I know that's meant to be quick fire. That's a very difficult question.
Take your time.
I don't really have. I don't really have guitarists that I like from a point of view of them being a guitarist and being amazing at guitar. I think that there's musicians or songwriters that I admire more because of the kind of the creative way that they create a song, or like something unique about their voice, or the way they combine their instrument with their voice, or something like that is kind of I think more interesting to me. And also the other thing is I admire bands that are unique and that create something, and for some reason have like a unique combination of elements which doesn't seem like it should work but does work. And like, just going back to a very obvious example that everyone will know, Blink-182, like I think that they're a very interesting band, because both only the drummer is actually good at his instrument. The drummer is a very good drummer. The guitar and the bass in all their songs are incredibly basic, very, very, very basic. The songs are very, very simple songs. Their voices are fine, but not amazing. But at the same time, they were, and still are, the biggest pop punk kind of style band, and had a huge influence on youth culture at the time, and all of these sort of things, mainly because of their songwriting capability, and that they were able to combine the kind of elements that they had in such a way which it was reminiscent of music that had come before them, so it wasn't completely alien to people's ears, but at the same time unique enough that it kind of blew people's minds, and obviously went crazy. And they had unique voices, they had kind of a unique way of putting songs together, and I think that's kind of really cool when someone. Lots of people are really great at guitar, but when someone figures out how to combine lots of different elements of music and songwriting and singing and whatever together in a way which really captures people's imaginations and that sort of thing, I think that's the kind of the most interesting thing, or the thing that I kind of admire most.
Well, agree. I think about Blink-182, they were great artists, from the screen presence to the stage presence.
Yeah.
To, you just about, and the music was great too. You could feel the energy, just sitting in a room and listening to Blink-182. They were awesome artists. That reminds me of one of my favorite musicians. So the people who write music is Noel Gallagher.
Yeah.
Oasis. Oasis is a very ordinary brand. The type, the chords that they play, the music that they make. Of course, Liam Gallagher had a great voice, but eventually, I think the thing about Noel is that he was a great songwriter.
Yeah.
And he could combine very basic elements to produce great music, especially some of the earlier albums.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I think Oasis is a very good example of that. And there are bands and musicians out there that write incredibly complicated music. It's very difficult to play and very technically challenging, and you look at them and you're like, wow, that's incredible that you can move your fingers that fast. But then there's also people out there who use 4 different chords their whole career and are able to write, 10 amazing songs using those 4 chords because of some special way that they're kind of able to bring that to life. And so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. What guitars do you have currently with you?
I have so at the moment I have the same guitar. I haven't bought a new guitar since quitting the band. It's been a long time now. And I was actually talking to someone the other day about basically like, back then I didn't have money for guitars. And so I had an Epiphone Les Paul. So basically like a cheap version of a Gibson Les Paul.
Yeah.
And that was all I could afford basically at the time. And now obviously I have money to buy like a nice guitar. And so I'm thinking that I will. And so if I do, I will probably buy a Fender Stratocaster because I've always wanted, and there's one in the music room here in Sydney actually, but I've always wanted one of them. And the acoustic guitar that I have no idea what it is. Again, it was like the most expensive guitar that I could afford at the time when I was in the band, but not anything that special. I think I basically Googled at the time, like best acoustic guitar under $200 or something like that. And so that was it. Yeah, but it's nothing amazing. The first guitar that I had, electric guitar, was a Fender Squier, which was like the bass level Fender guitar. And so that's a special guitar to me.
Great, thank you for sharing. What was the last song that you played on your guitar?
What was the last song that I played?
Or the last song you remember playing?
Oh, it was because I was preparing to potentially play a song on this, and so I was playing "No Such Thing" by John Mayer. Because I thought that would be a good song it might record well, basically, because it's kind of an interesting song on guitar. So yeah, John Mayer, who is one of the songwriters that I absolutely think is amazing, by the way.
Awesome. Would you play that song for us, for the audience who's listening to this?
Sure. I'll let's see.
That'll be awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great.
Maybe I'll just play a Green Day song.
That was awesome. I think that's time of your life.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
That was great. All right. Before we close, if there are a few tips or one thing that you would give to musicians or budding guitarists, especially within the KNIP team that is either trying to learn a guitar or is trying to, improve their skills, what would you tell them?
I think you need to find music that you enjoy playing. So for me, at least, playing any musical instrument when the music that you're playing is not, the stuff that you love, is a much more difficult thing to convince yourself and motivate yourself to do. Whereas if you're able to play music that you love, that makes it just a fun, enjoyable, amazing experience, and much more rewarding when then you learn to play something. From a more, I guess, technical point of view, making sure that you have a relatively good acoustic guitar with good strings on it will make you sound like a million times better than if you buy something cheap with cheap nylon strings or something like that. And it will also make you play a lot better because you'll be able to often with cheap acoustic guitars and cheap strings, the strings are too hard and they're too high off the bridge of the guitar, and so you have to put too much pressure on those strings to get them onto the fretboard, and so chords come out sounding kind of all rattly and not kind of clear, and you kill your fingers. And then one of the most kind of difficult things as you're starting to learn to play guitar, just from a pure physical point of view, is the pressure on your fingers, the tops of your fingers, and building up calluses there. And once you've got built up calluses on the tops of your fingers, it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, getting good strings and a good acoustic guitar will make a big difference on how quickly you can start to sound good, and that will make you feel good and that sort of thing. And and just find music that you love to play. As I said before, there's so much music out there for guitar. Like, go to ultimateguitar.com and search for a band that you like or a musician that you like, and you'll definitely find guitar music there. Learn how to read that, and you can start to relatively quickly play songs that you enjoy listening to.
Great, thank you. And the last question: if you were not at Google, what would you be doing?
I honestly am not 100% sure. I would have, in the context of this conversation, I would have loved to have been able to, be in a successful band for that band kind of, journey to have continued and not have ended so abruptly at the hands of record execs. That would have been, amazing. But that's how it is. I would, if I wasn't at Google, I would probably be, doing something somewhat similar to what I'm doing now in another tech company or another kind of tech thing. I don't think that I would be in the music world, as kind of, as much as that would be nice. I find it very difficult to find other people who like the same music and at the same skill level and the same level of commitment and all of that sort of thing, and get all that to line up to be in a band, let alone a successful band. So I think that is something that is probably not going to happen, but I'm okay with that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Will, for sharing your story about your journey with music. I mean, we could have gone on for another couple of hours. There's so many things that I would like to know more, and I'd like to dig deeper in the future. But thank you again for taking your time and sharing your experience about your love for music, your passion for music, what you've created, how you continue to engage and immerse yourself in music. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being the first first guest at this Unplugged podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was great. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was the first episode of the Unplugged podcast, brought to you by the team at Under the Mango Tree. See you next time.